You had to kind of like get to a certain point in life where you're like, wait a minute, how much am I paying in taxes? And you start questioning things.
Who really holds the power?
All of them have taken away our rights and even taken away the money.
They've tricked us into being responsible for that debt that the bureaucrats created.
It's the parasitic mafia controlling the world, bringing democracy to the world through genocide. The scam just keeps rolling and we keep going along with it because we're distracted by who's president or who our governor is. And this belief that if our guy just wins, they're going to take care of me. One of the issues that we face now is this almost superstition or hallucination that we need some authority to protect us, to manage us. There's too much mental programming to overcome to get past it.
At what point does this end?
This information needs to be extremely private. We have 4 different pathways.
And if you want to be sovereign, you have in order to be that.
I could see it. I could see it in people's eyes. I could see it in the economy. I could see how people were leading their lives, that we're finally waking up to what's really happening.
All right, you guys, here we are. Welcome to Texas.
Woo! Again.
Texas. You guys ready to go to the rodeo later?
Is Austin really Texas, though?
Kind of.
It's the new Texas.
It's one of the things that's cool about Austin is it's sort of an island culturally and politically in Texas. And I think that's what makes it, makes it interesting, right? You have great food and music and culture from the liberals.
Yeah.
And then it's surrounded by a bunch of guns from the conservatives.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one thing that tripped me out when we moved here. You'd be driving around and you see like a trans flag and then a big MAGA sign.
On the
I was
same
like,
corner.
cool. How is it everyone not killing each other? I like it here. This is fun. True diversity.
Truly.
Yeah.
I
But
like
for the audience, we met out in Nevada City, California on a visit out there, and which we loved meeting you guys and getting to know you out there. So I feel blessed to have you, man.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Since there's 2 of you here, and those listening will eventually learn your voices. Those watching can obviously see you. Maybe just give me a quick introduction of each of you with this premise. What first led you down the path of sovereignty, of wanting to be a free human being?
Great, thanks. I'm Michael Joseph. I'm the founding director of the Sacred Honor Educational Fellowship, which we'll talk a little bit about today.
Yep.
And my first introduction to this was from my father when I was a teenager. So my father was in the medical field all of his life. And he was the first one to introduce me to what he called the pharma mafia.
Oh, I like that.
Right. So he broke that down to me when I was a teenager. And I didn't really understand it at the time that well. And the thing that I appreciated about my pops is he stayed in the scene because, that's how he made money. And then he wanted to teach people some alternatives, which at the time, this is in the late 70s, early 80s, might I date myself, he was talking about supplementation. So this was the beginning of the supplementation rise, right? So he used to do speeches and teach people about supplementations and how to keep their body in balance and keep their body in a state of homeostasis, so they didn't have to go to the hospitals and be subject to pharmacology, right? Which limits it to drugs or surgery primarily, right? So that's what tipped my hat, and it never left me. That created a different lens, and I saw the world differently from that point forward. And as I grew older, I started seeing the world. I started seeing what I called the grand inequity. And I felt it. I could see it. I could see it in people's eyes. I could see it in the economy. I could see how people were leading their lives. And you could see it all over the media. Like nothing made any sense. And then I was introduced to William Cooper's material, Behold the Pale Horse. And I had a great opportunity to meet him before they killed him.
You met him, really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's like meeting a legend.
Yeah. It was. I didn't really understand.
It's like meeting the John Lennon of the
That's right.
conspiracy space.
Yeah. And before you even know who John Lennon is, right?
Yeah.
He was just a dude doing his work, And so for the first time in my life, I was when I was reading his book, that particular book, somebody was putting in the words what I was feeling. However, what took place at that time is I grew anger in my heart. I was mad. I saw the inequities and then I felt the inequities and I wanted to fight it with my fists, right? Then the anger rose in my heart, and it took me over. Right? So I probably 3 or 4 years, I had a lot of anger in my heart, and I didn't know what to do with it. So I walked away. I had to back off from the scene, and then my spiritual journey began. Right? Then I connected with Source, went through all different modalities of Taoism and Hermeticism and Buddhism, and grounded myself in who I was, and found, even ayahuasca ceremonies. I really went deep in finding out who I was and what my true source was. And once I grounded myself, all this lawfare world came back into my sphere. And then when COVID hit, well, actually, I want to step back into the late 90s. Are you familiar with the redemption manuals? You remember those that kicked out? And it was a group of dudes that were sort of the kind of original patriots that were bringing forth information. And, at the time, there wasn't the internet. So they were writing books. I think emails just started coming out. So they had email campaigns trying to teach people what was really going on with the system, the stuff that we're very clearly aware of now in a much broader field, and we bring it forward. So they were the original cats. Like, they're the shoulders, the giants of the shoulders that I stand on. So the original redemption manuals are the ones that were talking about secure party creditor.
Right? Interesting. So status correction and common law kind of topics.
That's right.
Like that.
They were getting into what the financial system really was.
That's why it took me until recently to actually start really getting into this, because the information, you had to read it all, right? No one was doing like video content. We didn't have social media. So I'd hear little whispers of things, William Cooper, Jordan Maxwell, guys like this. And I'm like, the birth certificates, what? The all caps name, like some of these concepts, but it felt so far out of reach because it wasn't that actionable. You didn't have, comprehensive access to the information or a path,
It was a slow moving train for sure.
So you were into this stuff back then.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was exposed to it. I didn't put much into practice. I was just aware of it, and I was curious. And then I did take some things into action, just kind of learning and paying attention to what folks were doing. And then when COVID hit, I became one of the founding members of the We the People Assembly of Nevada County in California. And that led me to starting support groups or action groups, because knowing what was going on wasn't enough. We needed to take action, and that was clear to us. This was the next wave of the dominant system trying to move into our lives. For whatever reason, they took a big step. It was very apparent.
Yeah,
woke a lot of people up. That I consider to be a blessing, and it changed my life completely. I decided to move into all this information that I'd been exposed to all of my life and put it into some kind of form and action. And that's ultimately what led into developing the Sacred Honor Educational Fellowship.
Beautiful. I love that perspective too. I try to remind myself of that big punt that the system did downfield, it's terrifying from one perspective, but on the other side of it, like locking people up in their homes with the internet and making them afraid is a really good way to make them curious and wake them up at the same time,
They have a lot of information on us. They're data collectors, and they have lots of algorithms, and they can make great predictions. But one thing they can't ever predict is consciousness.
Yes.
They can never really tell exactly where consciousness is going to go. And I think they fucked up.
Yeah. I do too.
I think they went, shit.
I do too.
We missed our algorithm.
The thing that's interesting about the awakening or the reset, depending on how you look at it, that's encouraging to me is the sheer number of younger people that are waking up to this information and just really understanding the mechanics of the system and the dark forces behind it. Because this was like it was an older person's game, right? You had to kind of like get to a certain point in life where you're like, wait a minute, how much am I paying in taxes? And you start questioning things, you start getting sick, dealing with the medical system, you start to back out of it in that way. But now younger people that haven't even really, faced the full impact of the system are going, before it even hits me, I want to know what this is about and how to get out of it. This is really interesting.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's so cool to see like young people on TikTok talking about this stuff. I'm like, wow, that's rad.
It's mind-blowing. It's exponentially, compoundingly moving forward. So one of our in the fellowship we have a senior fellow she's one of the old school. She's one of those legends that we stand on the shoulders of, and she now says, "We have overnight success after 40 years."
Right.
Finally.
What's her name? Marsha?
Marsha Ann.
Yeah. I heard the three of you on a podcast when I was doing my research. Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah.
What a champion.
Yeah.
Can't wait to meet her someday.
Quite a wisdom holder.
Yes.
All right. So what's your story, Phil?
Yeah. Hello. Thank you for having us. I'm Phil Mederi. I'm the equity director at the fellowship. So we're going to talk more about equity and introduce what that is in a minute. Just to give a brief story about my awakening process. Much like Michael, I had a sense at a young age that something wasn't right. I remember watching the news at a young age and kind of just feeling like they were talking heads, and that was my intuitive thought to it. It felt like it was programming, and I always felt that there was something more to it, and I was drawn to do investigations. And I remember coming across the Creature from Jekyll Island, which talks about the Federal Reserve.
Mm-hmm.
That really opened my eyes, because what's the true value in the system? Again, we'll talk more about that in a minute. But knowing there wasn't any money in the system, and knowing and then having this feeling that there's certain ones in this society that are essentially capitalizing off of the energy of others. I always felt that inequity, and coming from a family that did the best we could, but didn't have much, and those around us struggling, and everyone going through their challenges. It just felt like that. This isn't a conscious field of abundance that's necessarily shared with everyone, and so I was angry about that stuff too, very angry about it. And that led me to my spiritual awakening as far as processing that and transmuting that, and coming to a relationship with myself that I could accept all of that, and also surrender to life journey and purpose. And that was a very important way to move through that. So in 2008, I was introduced to equity. And I was essentially approached because I'd been talking to people about the Federal Reserve around me and at work and things like that. I was approached by someone that, in some respects, kind of put a lot of these dots together as far as equity goes. So that was kind of one of those synchronistic processes that happen in life, where you're in a certain place, and when you grow to a certain place, you're invited in some way. So this information used to be extremely private. It still is private. It's a private remedy. I'll talk about that in a minute. However, back then it was more of an apprenticeship model. There wasn't the internet. There wasn't any of these outlets. It was word of mouth, and it was face to face. And it still is that way because it's in the private. However, we get to come out now with all the awakening that's happening, and the communities waking up to the spiritual potential of what we're here to talk about, because this is very spiritual in a sense, because transcendence and consciousness is the way to, in all ways, find your self-governance and find your release from any of these pressures put on by this system. We're going to talk more about it later in the presentation. So I'll just put a pin in that. But however, it was a way to make sense of what's going on, but also that there is natural justice in the system. And so I was in, funny enough, crystals and law books. All right. Very, very much in the meditation and crystals, and that helped clear those energy pathways and then bring me in alignment with my purpose. One of the things I say almost every day is guide me with clear signs. I'm talking to source. Guide me with clear signs that I can easily sense and know, that lead me to my life purpose, my fulfillment of my life purpose, and joy and excellence. And that's one of my daily mantras. And it's interesting when the last part of it is, and I'll do what it takes on my end to walk it out.
Oh yeah, that's the catch.
So and boy did it ever come. And that's why that's one of the reasons we're sitting here. And ultimately, I believe that we connected in a way through that energy field with the way that all occurred. So equity has been a way to. It's been in alignment with my spiritual awakening and with those type of the work that we do on the inside, and letting go of those of those lower vibration. One of the big ones to overcome is fear. Another one is the unknowing or not knowing, and diving into the unknown, essentially. So that's a big one to overcome. Yes, and self-responsibility, which is the opposite of feeling like we are powerless in the system and things happen to us, and not exercising our conscious direction. So very much has been in alignment with that. And that's one of the biggest, beautiful things about equity. In fact, one of the synonyms of equity is natural justice. Another synonym is remedial justice. So it's all about remedy. And that's the beautiful thing about it, is it's about embodying this energy field of an inner peace, an outer confidence, and a genuine inquisitiveness. It's about holding that energy field. And I've seen time and time again, those looking to express this, just like in life, it's a law of attraction, and with the energy field we're putting out, it shapes the experience or the what we have on the outside. Well, the analogies I use for that is it's like a radio station or silent disco. Let's just say silent disco. You can look around the room and see who's on channel A dancing to the same beat, or you can see people on channel B or C, and it's not really easy to dance with somebody when you're on different beats. But we can switch that frequency whenever we like to, and that's something that we consciously tune into. So when we tune into the energy field of equity, we get different results in our life experience and the system. There's no fighting with this authority that's out there. This is about going to peace and returning to our creator divine rights that have been there the whole time. We don't have to fight in this man-made system that's over here. We can leave, and we'll talk more about that. But that's my setup. So it's been a wonderful journey indeed. And started in 2008, and now sitting here today, being in the progression and my life purpose and journey to be able to share this with a greater number of people and invite you all in to learn if you're interested.
Awesome, man. Well, I think that's something that I find refreshing about you guys, and just the way you approach this topic is it is coming from a more metaphysical lens, right? And I like these ideas, and we'll unpack them more, of course. Just I think of things based on principle, right? And that principles is what saved my life when I was an addict. I didn't know what a principle was. I knew nothing about fundamental laws, truth, none of that, right? It was just survival mode my whole life. And when I started to just apply simple principles, it's like they're sort of like in any principle, and principles of law are the same. When you apply them, it's like applying a specific frequency, a unit of energy, and it has a predictable result.
The guide stone.
Yeah. And so the connection of spiritual principles and principles of law, which some time ago would have seemed diametrically opposed to me, because one's kind of in the administrative, institutional, like paperwork realm. It's like, what's spiritual about that? Like, that's the thing I want to avoid, because I don't want to take responsibility for that part of my life, right?
Indeed.
But seeing this merging of like, oh no, natural law, these principles are pervasive in all aspects of life, even the paperwork, legal side. So I think that's really interesting. But I want to run a kind of a meta idea to you guys. So I've been sober for almost 30 years, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. But I'll be real. Sometimes I still crave the ritual of winding down at night with the proper cocktail in hand. It's that little ceremony, pouring a drink, taking a sip, exhaling. It's something I've missed. That's why I love Little Saints. Their old-fashioned canned cocktail gives me all the depth and warmth of the classic. Smooth bourbon vibes with the orange peel, cherry, and spice, without a drop of alcohol or sugar. But what really sets it apart for me are the functional ingredients. Reishi mushroom calms the nervous system, while Damiana leaf gently lifts your mood. And together, they create a nightcap that doesn't just taste incredible, it promotes real relaxation and recovery. So for me, that means I can share a cocktail with friends and still feel present, grounded, and chill. So visit littlesaints.com/Luke, and don't forget to punch in the code Luke to save 20% off your first order. One of my favorites you'll find there on the site is the Little Saints Old Fashioned. It's the nightcap that actually gives back. It's really the perfect evening ritual. Softens the edges of your day with every sip and zero downsides. So again, that link is littlesaints.com/Luke and the code is Luke. So when I started hearing about this stuff, just common law and remedy and status correction stuff, it was hard to access because of the lack of information. I didn't have a mentor, right, that I could go sit with at a desk and like do the work. But I knew about it and I just kind of like brushed it off because I thought the name of this game here is to accept that you live in a world of dualism, right? And then you overcome it through your spiritual work where you're in this dualistic world, but you kind of rise above it because everything is based on the power of the mind, right? So I thought, well, okay, I've learned enough information and I know enough conspiracy theory to know that I'm essentially, as a US citizen, a free-range slave. And the ways to get off the plantation seem too confusing, too much work, it's too scary, there's too much mental programming to overcome to get past it. So I'm just going to learn acceptance and surrender to the fact that I'm here and just like enjoy my time here as a free-range slave.
Right.
And I was able to do that for some time. And I felt, at peace with it, right? And then when I started learning more about the things we're going to talk about today, something, fortunately, sometimes I regret it because now, there's actions that one must take. And if you want to be sovereign, you have to do those actions in order to be that. I started to see that part of my karmic path is not only to evolve seriously, but to go back for my physical self here as a living human and extricate myself on the physical level too. It's like it's another part of the Earth School game that I thought I could bypass. And I'm starting to see like, now this is part of the thing. You can become free mentally and spiritually. That's great. But you're still in a body and you're still in the system and you've agreed to all these contracts unknowingly, but you still agreed to them. You put yourself on the plantation, even though you didn't know that's what you're doing. And your parents helped you, even though they didn't know that's what they were doing, right? So now it's kind of like I hit this point, I'm like, oh man, I got to go on a recon mission for my physical self back here in the Earth, plantation and pull myself out.
Yeah.
And, once that clicked, there was kind of no turning back. So I don't know what the question is there, but, on the metaphysical level, you could just ignore all this stuff, right? And work on your spiritual path. But it sounds like you guys in your own way have had a similar path where you realize it's all part of the same game. Where's that intersection for you?
Once we evolve to the point of conscious ascension and we can move in and out of these meat suits, then we don't have to worry about some of those things, right? But then we've already transcended all those things that you were talking about. And I wanted to clarify one thing. You were talking about it takes a certain something or something or something to be sovereign. And the truth is we're already sovereign. We're already free. We have just voluntarily accepted certain offers from the system that was created. So a group of whatevers, we don't really know what the whatevers are, but we know it's in existence and there's a system there that has bound us through a system of commerce and contracts. Right? So when you realize that we're in these meat suits or we're in this third dimensional space and that we have all these resources around us that are in full abundance for humanity to use the way that we want to, and that there's a dominant structure at play, and for whatever their agenda is, it's hard to know. I'm not claiming I know it. I just know that it exists and that there's a way out of it. There's a way that we can become aware of it and that we can separate ourselves from it. And the reason we know it is because we act in it and we live in it and we see it happen every day. And that we ultimately, when you find this out, that we are actually what animates that system, because the system is a hollow box. It can't exist without our energy and without our currency. We are the creators. They're the imitators. They need our energy for creation. Right now we're getting into some metaphysical aspects. It literally can't exist without our influence. and our interest. So when you grok that, then you start asking the question, well, who really holds the power? Well, clearly the creators hold the power, not the imitators. The imitators feel powerless, so they need to leak our energy away from us to build something that they're wanting through their own limitations, right? So they're pulling from us. And we just have to become aware of that. And when we become aware of it, I believe we can have an instantaneous shift in humanity and the world can be a different place. So we're just,
Beautiful.
we're on that wave right now. We're on the forefront of
Yeah.
that wave where things are shifting in that direction.
That's beautiful. Yeah, because the way I think I was holding it was still giving the system too much credit,
Mhm.
right? It's still like a subservient attitude, like,
Yeah.
I got to figure out a way to
Yeah.
escape now. It's like, no, I'm actually the one that's in charge. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the funny thing when you're thinking about politics, right? It's like we think of this authoritative system when in reality the way it was set up was they're supposed to be public servants, right? It's just the whole thing's so upside down.
Mhm.
It's so upside down that we don't even know that
Mhm.
or even believe it when I say it.
Yeah.
Right. So if
Yeah.
I get pulled over by a policy enforcer on the Tar River out there,
Love that.
why am I
Tar
afraid?
River.
Why is my nervous system on fire? I mean,
Yeah.
the person has a gun and I don't know what their temperament
Yeah.
is, right? So I mean, there's a logical reason for it. But most of it is the programming that like, that's my boss.
Mhm.
That's the teacher. I've been a bad boy. I'm
Yeah.
going to get in trouble. Right. It's like, no,
Yeah.
what? How is this guy even paying his bills from me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the
Exactly.
boss, actually. Whoa, it's a different relationship,
Yeah.
right?
Presumed authority.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's talk about the like you said, you feel like you're in school and there's the teacher or
Yeah.
where it's the program in the
Yeah.
public system, and you'll hear us talk a lot about public and private. So let's just get into that for a second. Public means you went to people go to public schools, public libraries, public everything. That's part of the man-made construct or the man-made structure that we're talking about. Now, when we go back to the republic or private, the private is our relationship with the divine, our capacity with the divine, knowing that that's where we are in the image and we are part of the divine. And then our status is our relationship with everyone else and our conduct dictates how we're treated in that situation. So the program is in our mind. The program is the only thing that was offered to most of us.
Mhm.
And so that's the first part about breaking the spell, which we'll get into more in a few minutes, is understanding that it's always been there. It's like Dorothy in Wizard of Oz, no place like home, click your heels together and you're there. You're already there.
Yeah.
It's just removing that.
Right. Because it's like one way of looking at it is the belief that, let's just say, the government at large is what grants us our rights.
Yes.
I mean, this is like the crux of it,
Yeah.
right? Whereas the place you guys are coming from is that, no, these are rights that we have just because we were born,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
God made us.
They're natural.
Yeah, natural rights.
Mhm.
I think where we get tripped up is not only believing that our rights are provided by the system, but the difference between our rights and benefits and privileges
Mhm.
that we want to use within the system
Mhm.
that we don't know come
Mhm.
at a cost,
Mhm.
right? Which are,
I wanted to add something in there that's important for people to grok. It's a distinction. So the system has rewarded people for over-intellectualization. Like they run us through higher academia and they give us these pieces of paper to be intellectuals. And that means that we're holding our mind as the highest over the intelligence of our hearts, right? Our minds can be manipulated. The truth of our hearts are never wrong. So the system's very clever. It rewards us for over-intellectualization. So it creates a super complex system with statutes and codes, all these regulatory systems and like massive droves of tax regulations, super intellectual, right? Super structured that nobody fucking understands.
Yeah.
Right. And so we have to lean on someone else to decipher all of these things. And then we're rewarded for it. You're rewarded for leaning into the intellectual side. And people will do one of two things. They'll work their ass off to try to intellectually understand it, or they totally drop out of it. and they just go along to get along because they think they're not smart enough to get it. But the truth of the matter is that, and natural is different and easy and simple. All things true are simple. That's a motto I have. All things true are simple. So we try to help people understand the distinction between that super highly overly intellectualized, confusing corporate system, which is man-made, and that's an option we can lean into, or we can lean into the world that's natural. We can lean into what the Constitution, the original Constitution, was designed to protect us from, that kind of a system. So I wanted to create that distinction because there's a lot of people out there that want to intellectually debate you all the time on this, that, and the other, the statutes of this, that, and the other. Tax
That's a
codes
really interesting point, though. It's like the way the system is organized is to get us caught in our heads.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the root of all of our problems in the first place,
Yes, absolutely.
It's like the more I think about a problem, the worse the problem gets, right? Yeah. Sometimes it's just like, let it go, allow intuition to come in and start offering some guidance.
The heart knows. We've just been taught to override our hearts with our minds, and our minds are messy.
Okay, so I'm trying to see where I want to go with this, because I really, my intention is for this to really land for people and for people to understand that you don't have to figure it out on your own. You guys are in the business of helping people figure it out. But I think one of the issues that we face now is this almost superstition or hallucination that we need some authority to protect us, to manage us, etc. And because of the system that they call democracy, with elections and whatnot, elected officials, we get like, it's like we're like shoved into this sausage maker, and when we come out of the sausage maker, we're left to choose between left and right, Republican, Democrat, right? And this belief that if our guy just wins, they're going to take care of me, right? And no one's ever happy, and whatever side it is essentially ends up doing the same thing, which is pushing for more control. And the degradation of our rights and more taxation, et cetera, right? And fluctuating the dollar and blah, 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 interest rates. Like the scam just keeps rolling, and we keep going along with it because we're distracted by who's president or who our governor is, right? And I think what you guys and others are doing in the law space is going, cool, you guys just go ahead and do your thing over there. The system, let's system, go ahead, system. We're not fighting the system. We're over here on this completely different wavelength where it actually doesn't matter who's president. It doesn't matter if you're, red or blue or whatever. My wife, Allison, doesn't even know which side is which. Which is funny. I was telling you guys, she's like, wait, which ones are the red and which ones are the blue? I'm like, you don't even need to know.
She's in a good place.
Yeah, I'm like, actually, it's great that you don't know. I'm not even going to tell you. Just hilarious.
Blank canvas.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? It's like we're all down here like fighting for scraps when there's, as you said, like the Creator has given us more abundance than we would ever know what to do with. More land, more water, more oil, more electricity, more ether. It's like there's enough for everyone. It's just the system has manipulated us into taking sides and feeling like if our side wins, we can outsource our power to them and they're going to take care of us. Therefore, I don't have to do the work of taking care of myself.
Yeah, we're only supposed to delegate our affairs to those, our affairs we understand, to someone to take care of us, maybe because we don't have the bandwidth to do it. But that doesn't resolve us from not understanding what those responsibilities are, how to carry them out. I want to talk about principle for a second, because you mentioned earlier about being based. Principles are very important, how we principle ourselves. Well, that's the beautiful thing about lawful things, is they're built on principle, and they're built on, and they're called maxims in the law, which are settled principles universally accepted by all, and whose dignity and authority is chiefest. So these are based on natural law and the principles of that. And when you principle yourself, you can self-govern. And when you're fully responsible, you can self-govern in the republic type of way. You mentioned democracy and republic. A republic is for people to self-govern in, and they may be a federal government, but it's only there to take care of certain duties like trade and defense and I use the analogy of a homeowners association. We talked about that before the call. It's a homeowners association now. Now it's ran rogue like a lot of those do, and trying to take over our private personal rights. But our private personal rights are there, and they're based on principle. Now the democracy only exists inside the HOA. That's inside of the corporation. They vote for who gets to sit on the board and make their rules and those type of things. Now that democracy is only of District of Columbia. Now it's so when they're voting in there, that's for their state representatives are there to weigh in on the homeowners association. The Republic still holds all of our unalienable rights. We talked about natural rights. And then you talked about benefits and privileges. Those are alienable rights. They can be liened because they're contractual. Benefits and privileges are contractual. So when you sign on the dotted line, like if you have a driver's license, you sign to obey all the rules of the road. So when you get pulled over by that revenue agent on the side of the road, you have a contract that says that you'll obey all those things. So yeah.
I was mentioning this to Michael, learning enough about this stuff. One of the most interesting topics to me is like driving versus traveling, right? It's like you have an alienable right to travel. Makes sense,
roads.
Right? Who's going to tell me I can't move my body from this hill over here to that hill over there? What?
That's right.
God put me on this hill and he made both hills, so therefore I have the right to do it.
Yeah.
We're talking about the driver's license, and I'm like, when I learn this stuff, I'm like, I'm canceling the driver's license contract.
Give it back.
And I'm going to use my passport to travel, because I'm not performing a commercial activity. I'm not an Uber driver, right? I'm like, I'm just moving my human body, my flesh suit from one place to another. Then I realized you can't rent a car without a driver's license.
Yes.
So I admitted to you, I was like, I want the benefit and the privilege.
That's right.
Right? So it's like, I'm not willing to cancel that contract. Yeah. And so, now if I get pulled over, I have my passport card, right? I could go through that whole game, but then he's just going to run it and go, well, you have a driver's license, right?
No. If you have one, you can't deny giving it because you signed up for that.
Exactly. So it's funny, even as you start to learn some of this, it's kind of like, well, I'm willing to take the hit, so I feel like a sellout. But then again, what am I supposed to do? Buy a car every time I go travel somewhere?
Don't be hard on yourself because like we all are where we're at. It's just knowing what contracts you're involved in and understanding conscious place instead of being unconscious of what's really going on in the situation.
All right, here's the difference between supplements that work and ones that end up in your toilet. While most big brands are built on marketing, Bioptimizers is built on biology. These guys are scientists and biohackers obsessed with results you can actually feel. They focus on optimizing digestion, sleep, energy, and recovery. And that's why they've been one of the longest and most trusted brand partners on this show for years. Now, I'm sure a lot of you already use Bioptimizer, so if you're going to stock up, now is the time. It's Black Friday and Cyber Monday, your chance to save big on supplements you're going to use all year. And here's a quick lowdown. Magnesium Breakthrough packs all 7 forms your body needs to relax your nervous system, calm stress, and support deep restorative sleep. And then, of course, is my favorite, Masszymes, a full-spectrum enzyme blend that breaks down proteins, fats, and carbs so you absorb more nutrients and leave less waste. I think of it as a digestive performance upgrade. Now, starting November 23rd, Bioptimizers is offering 25% off their entire product line. Plus, orders over $250 come with free gifts like oil diffusers and blue light blocking glasses. So head to bioptimizers.com/Luke to save 25%. Oh, and heads up, don't sleep on their probiotic breakthrough. It's a super potent, acid-resistant probiotic that restores microbial balance and supports clean, steady energy all day long. One more time for the kids in back, that's bioptimizers.com/Luke, where you will get 25% off site-wide through December 3rd, 2025.
Yeah, well, I'm a big fan of picking your battles, so I like what you're saying. So we're in a transition period in humanity. There's going to be some quote-unquote inconveniences. What's the maximum law about convenience?
Oh, yeah, it's a private inconvenience is compensated for by public benefit. They're telling us.
Right.
Okay.
So there will be a period of inconvenience until we find our way of disattaching from those corporate entities and we develop private associations that there's a private association of free travelers.
Right.
So
Right.
is right. So
Private banks.
private
Yeah.
exchange
everything.
systems,
Yeah.
private exchange associations, et cetera. And they're in process. They're developing right now. You won't hear about them on the news. This revolution will not be televised, or this evolution will not be televised.
Yeah, then we're not revolting.
It'll be
here.
podcasted as long as they let me.
So I wanted to share that because people get confused. They think, yeah, well, I can't do this. I can't live in the private world because I can't function my life if I'm in the private because I can't do anything in the public. And that's exactly the opposite of what we're telling people. You can easily build your life and start developing your life in that private ledger, which is that republic ledger that Phil was just mentioning. And we teach you how you can exist in the public system as well with a lot more power and a lot more authority, where you're not leaking away your wealth through taxation. That's not constitutional. You're not setting yourself up in this commercial realm where things can be confiscated, like your land or your private property. All that happens. All of those events happen because you're in contracts you're unaware of and you don't know your rights.
Yeah.
And you leak that all away.
I remember
willingly.
how excited I was when I formed my first LLC.
Yeah.
I didn't know there were trusts and PMAs and all these other things. It's like the wealthy of the world understand
That's
this. I
correct.
mean, that's generational wealth and inheritance, right? It's like they're making like shell LLCs and S corps and shit that are just all held in trust, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like it can get so complex.
Yeah.
But I can agree with you there and confirm that there are ways to live your life without having to have all these contracts floating around.
Yeah. And you don't have to be wealthy, quote unquote, wealthy, in order to develop these private structures and these trusts and these church structures and these private clubs and associations. It's just you lead your life differently. Your appearance of life doesn't change, but it's how you structure your life and manage your life in the private ledger that's different. So it's kind of like Kmart. That's being bought out, right? You walk into Kmart and nothing changes when you're walking in the door. They still have their products on the shelves and they're still marketing. You still see them on television, on your phone. But behind the scenes, it's a complete restructure. There's new ownership. There's new bank accounts being established. There's trust. There's bonds. There's all kinds of things being set up behind the scenes that you never see. So it's just like that. Your public-facing world, the world that you exist and you function through doesn't change, but it's how you manage your life on the other side of things.
You're not having to live in a compound somewhere.
Yeah, you don't have to live in a
with
cave.
the militia.
And
That's exactly right.
And as more people wake up, we're in a great awakening, and there's all things are moving back into nature: natural food, natural medicine, natural ways of living. Well, natural justice, it needs to be at the foundation of that. If we're still using that fictional, man-made, just legal the stuff over on the other side, we're not truly breaking away and moving in the nature, and that's all artificial over there. So, and it's a detoxing process, and I'm sure a lot of people listening are aware of detoxing. We're around all of these contaminants, these artificial substances, and we have to detox from those. And it's the same process. We have to detox from those thought patterns, those ways of thinking, those even the energy that might be bent up in our body somewhere, releasing that as well. Fear is a big one. Like I said, doubt, all kinds of things like that. As we make this awakening, and a holistic awakening in all ways, and that means moving back into the principles of nature and leaving this fictional system that they've created behind. And I want to touch on for a second about leaving the system. For instance, if we don't learn to self-govern and own responsibility, and if you're fighting the system at all out there, and you haven't embraced your self-responsibility and self-governance, then what happens in history is when people leave, let's say everyone's freed, they'll just pick another person to take that position because they haven't embodied it in themselves yet. And that's what we're out here to talk about. Is it's up to each one of us to embody this. And it is very spiritual, as we're talking about. It's about pulling that in and living in the principle, because you said earlier about people having to have strict rules and society and structure and all of that. Well, those rules are there for a reason, because there are a lot of ones that haven't embraced that self-responsibility and that self-governance. So that's why those strict written laws are there to enforce and keep society in structure. Now, when we learn to self-govern, and we raise to the consciousness level of where we can live by principles, then we no longer need that outdated system. So
Totally.
that's the inner work.
Totally.
Yeah.
That I was looking into the land patent thing, right? And just thinking about, the fact that we don't own the land that we think we own.
Yeah.
We own
You're a
real
tenant.
estate. Yeah. And you'll know that every time the property tax bill comes or someone comes to make you pull a permit if you want to put a shed in your backyard or whatever.
That's right.
So I was thinking about that. And I'm like, well, how far could you take this? And I was talking to someone. I said, well, if I did a land patent, then I could just build a skyscraper in the backyard. And they're like, you'd be breaking natural law because you'd be impeding on the view of your neighbors, right? So it's like, it's the do no harm principle. It's so simple.
Yes.
So I could do whatever I wanted here, but if I was living by principle, I wouldn't do anything that infringed upon or harmed my neighbor.
That is right.
It's like, it's so common sense to me.
Yes.
But to your point, Phil, the vast majority of the population are out of integrity and don't live according to principles. So that's maybe the vacuum that's created where government's like, aha, we'll enforce principles upon you because we can't trust you to do it. The problem is the people that are doing the enforcing are even worse than the people that they're policing.
Thugs.
It's the fucking parasitic mafia controlling the world, you know?
Well, they're going to force freedom on you. They've even told us that before.
Right.
So that's the way. That's the way it
Bringing
goes over
democracy to the world
That's
through
right.
genocide.
Democracy.
Now let's talk about private and contracts real quick, because if you went to your neighbors and you proposed that skyscraper in your backyard and all of them, and you made a private contract where all of you agreed and everybody was cool with it, and you got consent, and you reached a private agreement, then that is the law of the situation, because all of you are now in alignment and agreement with that. Now, if you can't attain consent from your neighbors, then yes, it might cause an injury, and that's something natural law has principles about. But that's why it even encourages us working together, because when we're self-governing, we there's more incentive to work together. There's more incentive to reach agreement, and there's more incentive for alignment to happen, as opposed to involving a third-party intervener and going and having a banker in a cloak sitting on a bench make the decisions for you. Then that's the situation that, if you're in contract with the public, like what they done. I mentioned, I like the HOA analogy. They came and laid claim to everyone's private land. They said it's ours now. It got to that point, and HOAs sometimes act like they do control your land and own that, and they charge you an HOA fee that's contractual. It's the same thing that's going on here. And the Lodial land pathway is a way to pull forth that original private title, and the HOA now has no interest in your private land anymore. So that's essentially how that works. And so then, why not do that instead of being underneath this oppressive HOA that every year tries to gain more and more power over your private rights? But it's your choice with the contracts.
Yeah. The county is the HOA.
Yeah.
It's funny. I didn't know any of this stuff until there's the first house I've ever owned, So I was like, oh, that was my big dream my whole life. It's like, I'm going to own my own house, Yeah, I'll have a loan, but I at least own the equity, and I own the land, I own the title. And then you start looking at some of the documentation, right? Your loan contract and all this stuff. And it's like, oh, oops. Look at the fine print. You're like, you don't own shit.
Good for you for reading it.
Because what happens if you stop paying it?
Yeah.
And you don't own it real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot to learn about your home and land and the tenantship, and what's the deed really, and when you get your tax bill every year, what is that really? If you look at it, it always has some kind of bond attached to it, school bond, road bond. And essentially what those are is the bureaucrats borrowing money from the global bankers and cycling it through the system. And then they're taking your tiny portion of it, divided up by all the different houses or properties in the area, and you're paying the interest on that loan every year. So your tax bill is paying off an interest. And when you pay that, it's actually going to the globalists. And then the bureaucrats borrow more money to administer things in the community.
It's a Ponzi scheme.
But the tax bill principal keeps going up, or the principal, that bond keeps going up, and they never talk about it as a loan. They never talk about it as a bond. They never talk about that you're actually paying the interest of it, and they never talk about a principal. And you can actually go through the process to find out what the principal is against that bond, and you can discharge it. And then the obligation is gone. There's no impetus for the county to send you a tax presentment.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
So there's a lot of cool things to learn. We share all these things in the fellowship. We just love to share this kind of
I got to
stuff.
join your fellowship.
Yeah.
I've known about you guys for a while. Actually brings me to the next topic I want to talk about. When you start to learn about some of this stuff and you get a fire under your ass like I have, keep learning. I think many people who've tried can relate to the overwhelm and like the decision fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
Because unlike the old days when you guys got into it and there was just a couple people kind of in the underground sharing this information, now, thankfully, I think it's largely a positive thing. You have, a lot of thought leaders and teachers that have programs for sale and memberships and things like that. Many of them have been on the podcast. And there are so many different approaches to kind of doing the same thing, which is what we're talking about. Self-governance, removing yourself from the commercial system, operating in the private, and so on. But you have the equity path, you have the state national path, you have the secured party creditor. Brother Truth, a great guy that was on the show, he does a lot of stuff with Native American jurisdiction, tribal stuff. It's like
great.
You start looking at all of the options, and it does get very overwhelming. And it's just like, wow, which way do I go? And I guess that's just up to people's kind of temperament and personality, right? It's like what they resonate with. I really resonate with what you guys are doing. And I'm not joking. I'm going to like join your thing and start to study as soon as I finish this damn book. But it's a good way maybe to, if you could delineate kind of some of the different common law / status correction pathways. Like, where does the equity path differ from just, bare bones state national or the secured party creditor holder in due course? And you don't have to like break down the definitions of every path, but maybe just a bird's eye view of kind of what some of those main categories are that are now becoming more widely available.
Well, I think it might be best to just talk about what the foundation for self-governance is.
Okay.
So the original organic constitution was designed to limit the legislative powers of government so that people could remain in self-governance. Just like Phil was talking about, we can either dance in somebody else's contractual world or we can navigate our life into the private. So just sorry to interrupt, but so your understanding is that the republic that you just spoke of is still in existence. Absolutely.
It's just been superimposed by the commercial maritime admiralty world. So there's a duality there.
Yes.
Yep.
Just like the duality of Luke Storey, all caps, which is a corporate entity like an LLC, versus Luke Carlson Storey, not all caps, sentence case, that's the living, breathing man sitting right here on the land.
Well, we know from experience, not through historical doctrine, that the Constitution is still the highest law of the land. So I know there's a lot of argument in there. There's a lot of people that say, the Constitution it was always still part of the crown. And the fact is...
Or that it doesn't apply to you if you're legally a U.S. citizen.
Well, a U.S. citizen is still part of the big boys club, okay? So he's talking about the HOA. I like to call it the private club.
Yeah.
The United States Corporation is a private club. So if people want to see a delineation for themselves, they can go into their codes and they can go into the definitions, which is 28 USC 3002, and scroll down the subsection 15, and you'll see under definitions, the United States is a federal corporation. It doesn't say anywhere in there, United States of America, the Republic. The Republic is separate from the corporate United States. And all that started to happen to come into play after the Civil War. They had this Reconstruction period that introduced the 14th Amendment. So I want to create a distinction here. It helps people. So if you look at the language, earlier Phil was talking about contract law, and something that we haven't mentioned yet is that the law is inside the contract. So if you and I get into a contract and we write our own language in that contract, those definitions in that contract are law, because we're two sentient creators, two beings that put our energy and our intention, inscribed it on the paper, and there's nothing outside of that can change it.
So if you're my neighbor and you agree to my skyscraper in the backyard, that's law. That agreement supersedes commercial law.
That supersedes statutory system.
Okay.
It's a private contract, and because we're two godly beings. We're two sentient beings that there's nothing outside of it unless we consent to it coming in. If we consent to have the statutory system into our contract, now that statutory system
if we
is
bring in
in our
an attorney
jurisdiction.
at law.
That's right.
Right.
So if we decide eventually down the road, you want other neighbors to be part of your contract, you write them into your jurisdiction of that contract. So let me offer a little explanation for some people that might need a little more galvanizing of this. The 10 amendments, the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, has its own language and its own system of definitions for that language. So for instance, it has the word people and it uses the word persons, if I recall, twice. And what defines the words, the definitions of that natural language, which is a trust, it's a set of principles. There's the Webster's Dictionary of 1828, and you can still buy it today. It's accurate. Look up what the word person means or what people means in that book, and it's a living, sentient man or woman. That is the only clear definition. Now let's fast forward to the 14th Amendment, which was written after the Civil War in the Reconstruction period, and a lot of things started changing. Now we have the 14th Amendment, which is clearly a contract that says, people or persons with benefits, privileges, and immunities. That's contractual language. Now, what defines the definitions of that contract is Black's Law Dictionary. If you look up what the word person is in Black's Law, it's a corporate vessel, a partnership, etc. It's corporate language. So they did a little sleight of hand, a little trickery. And there's an old adage in the freedom community that the 13th Amendment freed the slaves and the 14th Amendment enslaved everybody and enslaved us into this corporate contractual world, this United States federal government that created their own statutes and codes that are different than natural law. And they had to make us corporate persons because a corporate dead entity can't control a living sentient being because a living sentient being has authority over it. So they had to create us into these corporate entities so it can contractually bind you into their world.
And we go our whole life self-identifying as that corporate entity.
As a U.S. 14th Amendment citizen.
When you get a bill in your all caps name,
that's right.
You're like, oh, that's for me. No, it's not. It's for that
that's
thing.
Right.
It's that creature over there.
That's right.
Well, it's a partnership. So there was a contract creating that 14th Amendment citizen and as a business, as an LLC. You said you made an LLC, right? Well, that's an LLC too. That's a piece of paper in a filing drawer back in Washington, D.C. And guess who the surety is? Guess who the responsible party is? When you made your LLC, you had to put a responsible party on there, didn't you? So the surety, they're going to come knocking on your door for whatever that business entity is doing because you're in a partnership together. And that's just the way it works. And so status, as you mentioned, is a way to distinguish legally who you actually are in that relationship and get that on the record. So if you can put on that you are a national of the Republic instead of a U.S. citizen that's in a filing drawer in Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. So that's the distinction, and that's why it's a legal standing, and that's the easiest way to break that down. And we don't need to run away from it. We just don't need to say, hey, that's not my guy. Just like your LLC, you operate through it, right? We just need to know how to manage our affairs through that channel and know who we are ultimately and how to show up and conduct ourselves in the proper manner.
I wanted to say something historically. The new Constitution, the corporate Constitution that was instituted after the Civil War, redrafted the 13th Amendment. So the 13th Amendment that we've all been educated on our whole life is not the original 13th Amendment. It was drafted in as the corporate constitution after the Civil War. The original 13th Amendment was ratified. I don't remember the exact year. I believe it was 1812 or 1813. And it was ratified, and it had the nobility clause in there. And it basically stated that nobody of noble blood or no nobility or esquire could hold an office in the United States. So they had to remove that because they wanted to fill up their coffers with attorneys and esquires and royal blood.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's coming out of the woodworks like crazy right now. You can actually find each state has their own version of the original 13th Amendment. And you can find them now if you look hard enough. It's fascinating to find it and read it.
And that came down to the War of 1812 because the crown was trying to put in a central bank.
Yeah.
And after that war started, they didn't want those esquires that are agents of the Vatican through England. The bar building or the bar association sits on land owned by the Vatican in London. Okay, so and we don't want to go down rabbit holes here, but they're foreign agents.
Yeah.
And so if they're holding office here, they have the different interests in mind than here. And so that's why they put it in, but they had to remove it because now we got the Federal Reserve System 96 years ago, and which was the same idea they were trying to put in back then. And it's been going on the whole time.
Well, they say age comes with wisdom, and I'm hoping that's true. But unfortunately, it also comes with wrinkles. So I'm going to let you in on a secret that's been soothing out my complexion and keeping my skin firm and toned. It's the red light face mask from Bond Charge. You might know Bond Charge as a holistic wellness brand with a huge range of science-based products to optimize your life. I'm a big fan and have been for quite a while. Their red light face mask emits both near-infrared and red light, helping to boost the production of elastin and collagen in your skin. Treatment time's about 20 minutes a day, and because it doesn't obstruct your eyes, it doesn't even have to interrupt your flow. I just strap mine on, set a timer, and go about my day. Another great feature is that it's cordless and rechargeable. Plus, it puts out literally zero EMF, which is super important, especially on a sensitive area like your face. So to get your red light face mask, here's what you do. Go to bondcharge.com/lifestylist and use the code lifestylist to get 15% off. Oh, and unlike other brands, Bond Charge very intelligently removed the blue and green light so you can be sure the mask won't disrupt your circadian rhythm or your sleep if you use it at night. Again, that's BONCHARGE, bondcharge.com/lifestylist, and that code again is also lifestylist. That brings up a really important point, I think, for the conspiracy theorists listening and watching. So many of us, myself sometimes included, it's like we want to know the truth, right? So we get so hung up in trying to figure out who the they are.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, was it the Knights Templar? And then they morphed into the Jesuits and the Masons. And it's like,
entertainment.
It's interesting, but it's a distraction, I
Yes,
think,
it
in
is.
the end, because no matter who they are, doesn't really matter. It's the system that they've built, which is what you guys have been describing. Okay, so we don't really care who built the system. We want to know how the system operates to the degree that empowers us to build our own parallel system in the private and live over here. And then it doesn't really matter who created the system, what the system is. How do we not operate within it? Does that land with you
Oh,
guys?
I so appreciate you saying that.
Because it's so sticky. I mean, we want to know who the villain is, right? It's like you watch a mystery, murder mystery. It's like you want to know who's the killer. I think it was this guy or that guy or her. It doesn't really, like solving the crime in this particular case doesn't really matter. We know there's a crime. We don't need to know who the criminals are. We need to know how to protect ourselves from being siphoned, by their parasitic forces.
I talk to a lot of people that want to come from the standpoint. I really love that you're bringing this up. This is a great point.
Well, I'm speaking from experience, just that human drive of like, I need to name the them so I know who I'm up against.
Well, I think it's part of the social engineering that we want to be we're put into that box that if we don't know why something is happening and we don't know who is doing it, then we don't see it happening.
Right.
So I just explain to people, okay, so you don't know who's doing it and you don't understand why they might be doing it. So you're telling me you can't see that it's happening. So let me ask you, see that red car out there? It's a red car, right? We both agree that's a red car. Do you understand how that color red is made or why that color red is made? To know that it's red? No. You see that it's red. We all can see that it's red.
And do you know who the engineer was that built the transmission and the engine?
Right, exactly.
And sewed the leather seats together. I mean, do we know any of that information? We see it. It's there.
I mean, I think some of the history is important. There's these key points, right? The Naturalization Act, the Federal Reserve Act, the Emergency Banking Act, Social Security Act. I mean, over the past couple hundred years, there's been some linchpins, that really changed the way we live. And all of them have taken away our rights and even taken away the money, So I find that to be kind of important. You want to know the structure, but as far as like getting into the weeds of the deep history and who they are, does it matter if they're like ETs or Jews or
Right?
anyone that gets blamed for it, right? It's
right.
like,
Yeah.
I think that it's an energy that just works through these different groups and bloodlines, right? And so it's like it shape shifts over time in terms of where they're located, what their doctrine is, and kind of, the costumes they're wearing and so on. But it's more like an energy. It's an antithetical to life, anti-human, anti-beauty, anti-love sort of energy. And so knowing that's there is maybe important to come to terms with that. It's hard to accept that, but I believe that to be true based on the evidence of the red car, right?
Yeah.
Wars, all the things. But that's still, even knowing that energy's there and not really caring like how it manifests or who it manifests through, still doesn't help me extricate myself from it and stop the bleeding, right?
I love that you mentioned some of those milestone type of moves that were made in history. The reason we talk about them is because where there's inequities that violate natural rights and unalienable rights, then there's always a remedy provided. There has to be to uphold those principles. And so sometimes the way we've located these remedies that we have to offer and share is that we see the inequities in the system, we see the red car, and then we understand, we trace it back to see where that came from. And then typically, it's actually written in to that change that they made. And when I say they, whoever authorized that, they added in there, for instance, with equity in the 1933 Emergency Banking Relief Act, they wrote the equitable remedy into the public policy that was actually contrary and treasonous to the United States Constitution, Article 1, Section 10. So there was a public overlay over alienable right, over the unalienable constitutional protection. And instead of committing treason, they had to furnish the remedy along with it. And so it's written in there. And so it's literally, we follow that to the letter of the law.
That's
because
interesting.
that was added. Yes.
It's sort of like that. It's like the prince. It's weird because the dark side, for lack of a better term, also kind of follow the rules, right? The revelation of the method thing. It's like somehow on some level they know that there is
There's
a natural order
law
that supersedes them, right? It's like they kind of follow the rules. You'll see, like when you see when a big like tragic event happens, right? And then you see it was embedded in a movie 10 years ago, right? The exact thing, the revelation of the method kind of thing. It's like when the Grim Reaper comes to your door, they can't just like barge in. They got to go, hey, I'm the Grim Reaper. Will you let me in? I'll give you some candy. You're like, I want candy. Come on in. Boom, gotcha.
That's right.
Yeah, you took the handout.
Yeah, that's real. Is the remedy for the Emergency Banking Act discharge?
Yes, because just for those of you who don't know, in Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution, gold and silver were designated as payment of all debts. So in 1933, when the corporate United States went bankrupt, they surrendered the gold and silver to the Federal Reserve, which is a private trust, by the way. Just to let everybody know, so that when we mention these words, they matter. It's a private trust. They surrendered all the gold and silver in exchange for this public debt credit system that they replaced it with. What's that based on? Well, it's based on the people of the nation, all the people of the nation. Future productivity based on credit issuance. So there's no substance behind it, unless you're talking about us and everyone else that's living and breathing and pulling our britches up in the morning to go out and create and produce and things like that. That's the substance, as Michael was saying.
Currency.
The currency, that's what animates this system. And there's no gold or silver any longer. So they put in legal tender, what is legal tender? Well, actually in the HJR 192, it says including Federal Reserve notes. Now, when the law says including but not limited to, they're only telling you one of the things that's there and that you can sniff that out. So if you look deeper into the discussion and the resolution, you find that there's multiple different types of legal tender. Now, we think that it's these, what we call dollars in our pocket here in the United States. What does this actually say on there? It says a Federal Reserve note. Now, what's a note? A note is a promise to pay. It's an IOU. So that's one form of legal tender. It's a promise to pay. Now, there's a whole nother family that we're not even taught about. When people are in control, they limit the options. So if you take your child to the restaurant, you're going to give them, hey, you can have this or this, right? You don't let them have the $80 ribeye steak. You're like, you have the kid burger or the corn dog or whatever. And so, it's like limiting options, but we always have more options typically than we're led on to believe. So there's a whole nother class of legal tender called bills and drafts. So we all call them bills in the mailbox, don't we? Did you know that's part of legal tender? Okay. Were we taught this in public school? Were we taught what to do with this? And guess what? It makes up 90% of the money supply.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. The notes are about 10%.
What?
So we're 90% of what's moving around out there. We're not even taught how to manage our affairs in that way. So that's where discharge lives in legal tender. We can discharge with Federal Reserve notes out of our wallet in our bank account, or we can discharge through bills, which, when properly authorized, become bills of exchange that are legal tender in their system because they're issued from that system. So, that's the premise. That's our remedy that we received, and how to walk that out and discharge public debt and also public contract offers. If you ever receive anything from a 3-letter agency or anybody you don't want to receive mail from, they are contracting with you through commercial law. So there's a way to honor that contract offer and not consent and not be obligated to that offer and be left alone. And that's what it's really about. Most people I talk to, they don't want to fight the system or revolutionize the system. They just want to be left alone to conduct their private affairs. They don't want to be interfered with. Well, I'll tell you this. In Black's Law Dictionary, which is the corporate dictionary, we use that because we use both dictionaries. But however, in that one, it says under privacy right of, it said the first entry is to be let alone. And you read further down. It says, I'm paraphrasing here. It says, if the public concerns itself in your private affairs, it says equity will interfere. It doesn't say anything else will interfere. It says equity will interfere because if there's injustice in the system, equity is based on fairness, justness, the right dealing between men and the system, and it wants to make all parties whole. No one loses in this situation. And when we learn to navigate in this way and embody that conscious energy field, then we can conduct our affairs in a responsible manner, and we don't have to run away from these bills that come in the mailbox. We have the power. We're the substance. As Michael's saying, we're the currency in the system. We have the power to discharge those.
That's such a difficult... we've been so indoctrinated into the belief that we're the debtor.
Right.
When we're actually the creditor.
I wanted to talk about that.
And
I wanted to create a distinction.
I barely even get it, but it's like the way it's been explained to me makes sense because it's validated by, just historical documentation, et cetera, the way the system's set up. But still, when I get a presentment or an offer in the mail that says you pay $43 for this or that, I still think I'm the debtor. I owe them the money. When my energy throughout my life has been the thing, as you said, Michael, earlier, I've actually supplied the substance and supplied the value, the creativity, the energy that makes that possible. Like to put that $43 into the etheric existence, right?
Yeah.
Can you explain how we're upside down with who's the debtor and who's the creditor?
The easiest way for me to explain that in the most simple fashion.
Thank you, because it's super confusing.
It can be. So I just feel like this.
You're really good at that too. Like he's good at going in the weeds, and I'm like, I can follow along pretty well, but like when you break it down, I go, oh, it's that, okay,
dude. That's the beautiful balance.
Yeah,
and
it's good synergy you guys have.
So the way that I explain it, that I think reaches people, is as the 14th Amendment citizen, as the U.S. citizen in that federal corporation that we've found ourselves locked into as that corporate person, well, that corporate person in the public side is the debtor. They're the ones that they've tricked us into being responsible for that debt that the bureaucrats created. All right? So there's that.
So your all caps name corporate fiction is
the responsible party.
But you're not.
And that's the public side. Now the private side, it's very important to really remember that there's a public ledger and a private ledger. So the public ledger is that U.S. citizen who's the debtor or the surety of that debt through future labor and liens against your property and all that jazz, which are just titles, lienable. And then on the private side, we are the currency. We're the one who creates the energy. So I want to give you an example. There's a book called Modern Money Mechanics that was written by the Federal Reserve of Chicago, and I don't remember when it was written, but there's a section in there that says, how is money created? And essentially they're saying, how is credit created? And it says essentially that the process is through the signature. So we as the energy, as the creators, as the creditors, when we use our signature, well, that creates the process of credit in the public system. And with that comes a lot of responsibility. So again, the public side, we're the debtors, the corporate person is the debtors. On the private side, we're the creditors. We are the ones that create the credit and create the energy and currency of the system with our signature. And then it goes into a systems of bonds. Every time we sign something, it goes through a cycle of bonds. And there's a whole bond world out there that people could track if they were crazy enough that creates these currency wells.
Could you generalize the bond world, as you called it, as kind of micro insurance policies against the promise that you made to create that currency with your signature?
You're probably better at picking that apart.
Well, I mean, it comes from the root word bondage. So there are ways to encumber. It's a promise. It's a way to encumber. It's a guarantee. And somebody's on the hook for that in those situations. And someone else is profiting or holding
it's like bail bonds, right?
Yeah, and the U.S. bonds are essentially birth certificates and people in jail and those type of things. That's what funds the bond market, the U.S. bonds. You ever wonder what backs that up? There is no gold or silver.
Right.
What are they backing it up with? They asked Obama at one point, what was something about the value in the system, and he held up a bunch of birth certificates. Here you go.
Oh, wow. I wasn't aware of that. That's amazing.
That's funny.
You look at immigration policies too of letting people in and naturalizing. They're issuing those. It's issuing more collateral into the system. And I want to go back to why this is a thing too, and why
I thought they did it just because they're compassionate.
Yeah, it affects.
I love how the system does that, right?
Oh,
you go and destroy another country and basically bribe their government to give up natural resources.
Yeah.
Go to war with them, whatever, CIA, infiltration, all that shit. Then you open the borders and flood those poor innocent people with your country just to use them again.
Yes.
For what you just described.
That's right.
It's crazy.
Yeah, because the bond market
and the unlearned,
fluctuates.
compassionate person thinks, let everyone in. What's the problem?
Propaganda.
So the reason that they billed a U.S. citizen is because during the Emergency Banking Relief Act, there was a pledge made by President Roosevelt and then passed by Congress to indemnify the Federal Reserve, which means make them whole or pay them back for bailing out the nation with his debt slavery system or credit system. And so that they went into the Trading with the Enemy Act and removed the exemption for U.S. citizens. So U.S. citizens became enemies in commerce, and they charge us and bill us so that they get the credit issued to fund the system and turn the wheels. And so it's a necessity. It's a casino, and it's a crack ran casino. They can't get enough.
Yeah.
And they fund the markets and everything like that. So.
That's also why we need permits and licenses to travel across occupied territory.
Yeah.
So as a 14th Amendment citizen, we're considered enemies of the state. So we need permissions.
Wow.
We need permits. We need licenses to function and flow so they can control the awareness of who's in their occupied territory.
Wow.
But if you know that, then you can move away from that in the private. When you're in the Republic, you're not in that territory, in that jurisdiction any longer.
Right.
It's really trippy.
A lot
paradigm.
of this is on a higher level. It's like a case of mistaken identity. Right?
Yeah.
It's like we don't really know who we are and location, geography. We actually don't know where we are either.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right. We're on a landmass that, someone called America or the United States of America.
Mm-hmm.
But we get confused about like who we are as the living person based on, or in contrast to that corporate fiction, birth certificate, all caps name.
Yeah.
and also where we are, we're actually acting like, as U.S. citizens, that we live in the District of Columbia.
Mhm.
Yep.
When
That's
I'm just like on a landmass that somebody called the Republic of Texas at some
Yeah.
point, right?
And
It's
that's what-
really interesting. Yeah, I mean, you got to hand it to the level of sophistication of the mass scale of the manipulation and how all of this stuff is created. To your
Phenomenal.
earlier point, it's so intellectually complex. It's like, how could a normal person ever decode it?
Yeah.
I guess that's why there's guys like you that take the time to decode it.
It's-
show dumbasses like me how to get out of it.
It's written in riddles, and that's just the way it is. And it's quite simple, though. All things true or simple, as Michael says, and we were talking about earlier about principles. You don't have to go to law school and study for years all the statutes and codes and those big bookcases they have with all the volumes on the back end of that. You don't need to do any of that. That's their system. That's in the legal world, which is formalities, procedures, hoops. It's hoop after hoop after hoop, and you got to jump through them correctly, like one of those dog competitions where you got to jump over the bars and the hoops and stuff.
Perfectly.
That's exactly what that Admiralty Maritime at law legal system's about. In the definition of lawful in Black's Law Dictionary, it says that legal is the antithesis of equity. It says they're opposites. So they operate in parallel systems.
Wow.
Equities in the private, legals in the public. And so the equity is built on principles. It's called the unwritten law, but it's also the principles are written for all to read. So you don't need to learn a bunch of volumes. We just need to learn the principles. We need to adapt our vibration and energy field to be in alignment with our conduct and those principles. And then we're able to exercise three main tools in equity that are available to us in this post-1933 system. One is equity discharge. Look up the definition of discharge in Black's Law Dictionary. There's a subheading that says equity discharge. It's written right in the dictionary, right there for all to see. That's our remedy in equity. And that works for public charges, public debts of all sorts. If it's a public charge, public debt, discharge it. There's also, like I told you, if you receive something from, let's say, a 3-letter taxing agency that says, our records show that you failed to file for blah, blah, blah. Well, if you didn't file, you didn't volunteer, which is your choice. However, that offer that comes in the mail, if you don't honor that without consenting, then you fall into their game. So it teaches you how to manage those type of things where you can stay out of their, just leave me alone. Okay. And do it lawfully, do it honorably, and do it peacefully.
That's my motto.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what it's
And
about.
that's
me
really
alone.
what most people want. At least we find.
Yeah. What was the next one?
The next one is dissolving public contracts. So based on the principle of repentance, what that means is we acknowledge our mistake, and then we choose a new path forward. We change our conduct. That's upheld in the system. And if you look in Black's Law Dictionary, under rescission, second paragraph, it says equity practice. So again, it's in the dictionary as a remedy in equity, and it's unmaking a contract, a public contract from the beginning, not merely a termination. It makes it go poof. Now, there's certain principles that have to be upheld. It's a dynamic process, but it's available to those that are aware of it and have knowledge of it and know how to properly apply it in situations that necessity dictates. And the third tool is the art of inquiry or inquiry. Now, the law tells us that we have a duty to inquire into doubtful matters to discover what's truly lawful. If we're not asking the questions, then how can we be as the king? The king asks the questions, and the others that are servants are meant to answer the questions. And under the maxims of investigation, there's one that says that he who makes the claim bears the burden of proof. So if some public authority, presumed authority, is making a claim against you, well, when you inquire into that, and probably a lot of you have heard about authority figures saying, I'm asking the questions here.
Oh, yeah.
Well, no, that's not the proper natural order. You have a claim against me. I'm the one that gets to ask the questions. And guess what? You get to prove all of it. And I don't have to make any claim or argue with you or fight, because what they're doing isn't even lawful. So we just shed light to that through peaceful inquiry. And they have to do the right thing when it's all out in the open, because plausible deniability, which we'll talk about in a second, the system uses plausible deniability because if they're not aware of something, it's like one of these politicians going on Capitol Hill and getting subpoenaed. And they go, I have no recollection of that senator, or I don't know about that. I was not aware of anything like that. You hear him say that. That's plausible deniability at its finest. And unless there's evidence showing that they did know about it, then it flies. Because if you didn't know, you're allowed to be ignorant of the facts. You're not allowed to be ignorant of the law, and that's a maxim too. So if you're ignorant of facts, that's okay. But if they prove that you know the facts, and that's why we inquire into things, and that puts them on notice and they can't deny it anymore. Puts them on the hook.
Wow, that's powerful. Yeah. I've seen many people do this in a way that I wouldn't agree with or recommend when they get pulled over. Mm-hmm. Some people get very combative and they do the sovereign citizen thing and they get thrown in handcuffs. Yeah. But every once in a while I see one of those videos and someone will very calmly and politely just start asking questions.
Yeah.
So answer their questions with a question, and it goes on and on. I find that to be really interesting, but I think that's generally what those people are kind of applying, right?
Yes.
Or there's
may be.
Or there's the, I don't answer questions and you just shut up. But some people take it further in those scenarios and start asking questions about laws and statutes and codes. And majority of the time, the policy enforcer has no idea what the answers even are.
Right. That's right.
They're just following the manual, right?
And the manual doesn't include this.
If you're a fan of this show, you likely have some knowledge of the concept of quantum energy. We've covered it a lot over the past few years. Put simply, quantum energy is the source energy that exists in literally everything. Every one of us constantly interacts with the quantum energy fields around us. What sucks, though, is that your energy field can be greatly disrupted by environmental toxicity and chaotic energy created by EMF. Well, thankfully, the innovative folks over at Lila Quantum develop products to strengthen and protect our biofield and even mitigate harmful EMF. But let's be real here. Anyone can make claims about quantum energy products because this energy is, by its very nature, invisible and therefore difficult to prove. What can be proven, though, is whether or not a quantum energy product has a positive impact on the body. To solve this, Lila Q provides a grip of randomized, placebo-controlled single and double-blind studies proving the many benefits of their products. Of the various studies listed on their site, the dark field microscopy studies are some of the most intriguing. These studies demonstrate significant protective and improvement effects of the quantum block technology on human blood following only a 10-minute exposure. To feel the effects of quantum energy yourself, here's what you do. Go to LilaQ.com and use the code Luke10 to get 10% off your first order. That's LEELAQ, LilaQ.com. So as I was saying earlier, right, there's thought leaders and teachers in the law space, right? Mm-hmm. And everyone kind of has their different paths and things like that. One thing that I find a little troubling about it, and it's probably somewhat due to the fact that information is monetized, right? And people are charging money for their body of knowledge and guidance and stuff like that. So I think people get a little territorial. But I wish there was more cooperation, right? Where there were more open dialogues. You guys are really into the equity thing, and then this guy over here is doing it this other way. It seems to be very siloed, and people are more competitive than they are cooperative. Why do you think that is, or is that even true in your experience?
Just sort of depends. In my opinion, the ones that have the similar frequencies are finding each other, then we're finding cooperation. There are some people that are traumatized. They've been through a lot and they're acting and living through a lens of trauma and they haven't healed their wounds. And they are the ones that become the barking dogs and want to bite at you if you're stepping into their space in some way. There's a lot of ego still in the space. I mean, there's a competitive edge in there for whatever reason. I can't say I fully understand it. I can only go by what I've learned in my life, which usually people are expressing some element of trauma.
And it also shows the conscious journey as well, the consciousness journey. As far as like, this is a bigger thing than any one of us. This is a movement, an awakening of all the people awakening. This is community. This is this is bigger than that. And so the understand that we're all playing a part in this awakening in our own way. And that could be whether you're into natural law or you're in natural medicine or you're in the natural foods, whatever it is, we're all working together here, and the see where we can work to a common goal and of inclusion is the conscious way forward. Or else if we still feed into this separation story, then that's counterproductive to what's the bigger picture that's happening here. That's why aligning with purpose and tapping in to see with our community where we can be of service in a way is the ultimate goal for this to actualize. And if we really are going to be able to individually free our minds and live in our heart space and enter into this new paradigm, then that's the journey. Each one of us gets to look in the mirror. Each one of us gets to sleep with ourselves at night and understand where we're at in that journey and what our goals are and what our true intentions are underneath.
Beautiful.
I love that there's a lot of people out there doing a lot of different things. I am not interested in making anyone right or wrong about their path. I love what's happening. And I may not fully agree with every detail that some folks are doing, but that's really not of my concern. What's of my concern is that people are taking an interest in this.
Yeah.
Massively.
Yeah.
That's the importance of all this. And people will find their way. They're on their path. For whatever reason, they walk down a pathway that's going to help them find their higher way as they go along. Maybe they'll bump their head a few times. I can't say I was any different. I've lunked and bumped my heads a lot in my lifetime. And I just found my way.
With all the different paths, there's the thing that many people think their path is the only way, which maybe it is for them. But I think the equity is the one that I knew least about walking into this. And it seems to be, I don't know, a bit ambiguous. I mean, I have a lot more clarity about it now. So to that end, I reached out to a friend of mine who I know just talks shit about the equity path and has beef with it. And I was like, tell me what's your beef? Because it really resonates with me, but I'm just starting to learn about it. So I'm gonna read you what he says and see if you guys have a rebuttal.
Yeah.
He says, equity is just part of the tool chest, not the end all be all. Plus, it was merged with law in 1938 with the introduction of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. People act like it still works like it did before 1938, when it most certainly does not. Equity and law are commingled, and the idea that you only need to know equity is setting people up for massive losses in court.
So there's a lot in there.
I love it. I think I might know who this is.
Okay.
I think I've talked to him before too.
Well, and I asked you something about this, I think in California, and I was like, well, people say it doesn't work in court and stuff, and I think you said something like, well, the whole idea is that you don't go to court, right?
It absolutely works.
I was asking you about like case law and precedent and stuff.
Yes.
You're like, well, when people use equity, there's not a lot of precedent because like you get remedy and it's over.
Well, I think it would be important to create a distinction between exclusive equity, pre-33, and post-33 equity. So I'm hearing conflicting information in that in that little blurb there.
Okay.
It's kind of broad. So if you're expressing exclusive equity, which it sounds to me like that person is talking about exclusive equity and confusing it with post-33 equity. That's what I think is happening.
Okay.
So exclusive equity is purely trust law, which is very important to recognize. It's very important to learn how to administrate your affairs. It's a pathway, and it can be used successfully. I'm just going to use the word. The difficulty with that, and please understand, I'm being very general here, is that oftentimes it leads to court and leads to some kind of litigation, which litigation, it can work, but you got to learn to litigate. It's not easy to learn how to litigate. And it's controversial and it's full of claims and it can be very challenging. We don't take that path. We work through what we call post-33 equity. And Phil can explain it way better than I can. But post-33 equity is a whole different leg of equity jurisprudence. So the way that I like to explain it, I call it the great equalizer. So you have unalienable and you have alienable rights. We were talking about title earlier. So anything that's an unalienable or unalienable right is something that's protected by the Constitution and it's found in the Bill of Rights, but not limited to the Bill of Rights. So such as right to earn a living without an encumbrance, which is a tax, right? Right to own land without an encumbrance, like a tax. Right to protect yourself, right to bear arms. Those are unalienable natural rights, God-given natural ways for us to exist. There is no contract that can exist that can take one of those rights away from you unless you volunteer it. So if you find yourself into a contract that's stealing away or you voluntarily gave away your wealth through taxation or confiscation through some contract of your private property, well, there's a remedy for that. And what we talk about as equity, the great equalizer, helps you find that route, that remedy out of that contract that's stomping on your unalienable natural right. It's the easiest way for me to explain it. So exclusive equity is what we call just for simplicity, pre-1933 equity. And then in 1938, that guy was correct when they said everything collapsed, all the common law and equity and everything collapsed into a singular commercial system in 1938. Procedurally. And it's expressed through, Hopkins versus Erie Railroad.
That was the Supreme Court case, but it was the federal rules of procedure that replaced common law procedure because everything was commercial at this point. It all turned into commerce and contracts. So that by default, it's an admiralty maritime procedure, which is legal or at law. But I want to start by saying they are correct about equity being one of the tools in the toolbox.
Yes,
I want to be clear about that.
Agree about that.
It has its purpose in the foundation of self-governance. That's why we're not only expressing equity at the fellowship. We have 4 different pathways that all serve a purpose for being a valuable tool to self-govern and live in the private. Equity is the remedy or the fire hose that put out fires, essentially. And we do it through discharge. And what he's talking about with exclusive equity, this is concurrent equity. Concurrent equity means it's malleable and it follows the inequities in the system and it creates remedy, because one of the equity maxims is equity will not suffer a wrong without a remedy. It doesn't say the law will do it. Now, why do the maxims say maxims of law and equity? It's so distinct that it has its own place that it holds. Whatever, and I also want to share a maxim: equity is nothing. The law is nothing without equity, but equity is everything, even without the law. The law, the Article 3, Section 2, Clause 1, the 3 jurisdictions of the United States Constitution are in law and equity and admiralty maritime. So common law, equity, admiralty maritime. That was never amended. So although they may have been merged procedurally to accommodate this new corporate system, they didn't do away with equity. It's alive and well. I had a student in the courthouse a little while ago on the directory in the elevator. It said master in equity on the directory.
Really?
In the courthouse.
Wow.
Because I'll be clear, the judges sitting on the bench are like a general practitioner at a doctor's office. You need a referral to get to the different systems of justice in the courthouse. They're all still there. They have to be. There is no constitutional amendment. It's just procedure. So now you got to go to a general practitioner and get a referral to go to the equity, because those judges sitting on the bench, they're administrative judges of the executive branch. But Article 3, which is common law, equity, and admiralty maritime, they have judicial oversight of the judicial branch in that courthouse, but you don't get to see them right away. Now,
is this what the process of appeals does?
No, it's literally, appeals would go up to oversight potentially, but things get elevated to oversight. So you have to, to think that they did away with one of the systems of justice, of natural justice, the way it's designated in law. I invite them to read more about the justice system. Now, the other thing about that is there's something called at law and equity, and there's in law and equity. One's a fictional counterfeit that they run in these fictional courthouses, that, there's chancery courts in Tennessee and those type of things. They're still running at law, and they have some mirroring equity type of things into that legal form. But the in-law equity is natural equity, and that's one of the synonyms as well. Natural equity. So I do see how this can be construed in some ways. However, equity is alive and well, and when it comes to court, equity is the civil remedy. And if you walk it out in court, you win every time, because it's all about debt. It's all about charges. It's a commercial event. And when you hold the ace of spades, which is discharge, you don't have to argue. You don't have to litigate. You're there for banking purposes only. And if you look up bench in Black's Law Dictionary, the first entry is the bank. The second entry is the seat where justice is administered. So we're told that they're a banker first, the bench is a bank first, and then a seat of justice second. And so it's a commercial event. Charges, you go in there, we're there for banking purposes only. How do I settle this today? Would you please present me with the bill? Okay. That's how the way we talk in court, and we win every time because we extinguish the controversy. We close the account. If you look up court service and you look at the synonyms, you go to court process, you look at the synonyms, you go to negotiable instrument. They're presenting you with negotiable instruments in court. If you don't settle those and issue the credit, guess what? The surety gets to pay with their corpus or gets to pay with what they have, what they own. But if you settle it, you get to go home.
You go to jail.
The surety gets to go sit in jail. And what do they call it when you get out of jail?
Bond.
A discharge.
Bail.
A discharge.
You get
from
discharged.
From jail. Okay.
That's so funny, man. These terms, when you start hearing them with different ears, right? Like I was charged with a crime. It's like you were charged with a bill.
You were charged commercially.
So crazy.
Well, the President Trump, and this is something you can look up. He had 32 felony convictions in New York, found guilty by a jury, and goes to sentencing and receives an unconditional discharge and gets to go home instead of right. So add that one up. Who gets to go home after being found guilty for 30? And he's not the only one. There's other people that have. Okay, but I'm just saying that's high profile. And they even said in the headline, receives unconditional discharge. They made it seem like some state statute allowed it to happen, but they can't talk about this as private, so they have to make up a reason.
The statutory reason of why it was discharged.
We've had them in the courtroom before make up all kinds of reasons why they dismiss it.
Funny.
They didn't file this paperwork properly, so case dismissed or whatever, and you get to go.
But what they're really doing in essence is discharging it.
Yeah.
It's been settled and all parties are whole. There's
no controversy.
No controversy.
And discharge, it says in Black's Law Dictionary, discharge is a generic term.
Mm-hmm.
It's not meant to stand out. It's not meant to be named. It's like the soda pop at the grocery store that says cola on it. No one says, hey, can you bring some cola to the party? They go, can you bring some soft drinks or Coca-Cola or Pepsi or Mountain Dew or whatever? But bring some cola. No one talks about it, but it's there on the bottom shelf. That's discharge.
Wow. Wow.
So that's because people will ask. We bring that up because people will say, show me the case studies, show me the court case studies. And they don't exist because the discharge is generic. It doesn't show itself as discharge on the court records. It shows as dismissed for this or let go for this, whatever. But it doesn't say discharge.
Right. Because in a sense, because the matter is resolved, no one wins,
There's
right?
No
it's like, I didn't win the case, the litigation. It's just like, it disappears.
There was no controversy for there a win to be.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Settled.
You don't, and that whole thing, I'm going to go in there and show them and I'm going to win and stuff. If you just want to be left alone and you settle out the account and they get their digits from the credit, they get paid.
Right.
And then there's no controversy and there's nothing to see here.
And
everybody
basically,
gets to
they're
go
just
home.
trying to balance the books.
Yes.
And there's ways that you can help them do so.
Bookkeeping.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
I forgot to mention this earlier, but people, that have a podcast app would have already seen it. The show notes today, you guys, are lukestorey.com/equity, which is where you'll find everything we talked about. Not the least of which being clear instructions and links on how to get your ebook and all that. So break down the ebook and please send me a copy of it. because I need to learn more about this. And also just, give me like how your program is structured and what the community's like, scheduling, do you guys have like group calls? What's the whole thing about?
Great. Thanks for asking that. So if you want to just break down equity for just a moment and talk about the ebook, and then I'll talk about the programs, the Foundation for Self-Governance and the pathways, so people have a broader scope.
Yes, because we've been kind of all over the place. I'm sure some people that are new to this are like, what the fuck are these guys talking about?
Oh yeah,
and and also because we're talking about the private and the public, you guys aren't going to get on here and do discharge paperwork with me. You know what I'm saying? So it's like that there's a reason why things are public and private. So that's important. We're not trying to be cryptic or anything. It's just like that. You do your affairs in private.
We understand the distinction.
Yes, if you simply want to be left alone to conduct your private affairs, you need to operate in the private. And as we mentioned earlier, becoming a member of a private organization allows everyone to speak openly and privately about everything that we're talking about. And I know this is a new topic to most of you listening. I'm sure equity is something you're going to be hearing more about. I can guarantee that because it's definitely coming out for more availability to people at this time and place. As I said, it's been in the private and deep in the private with mentorship and things like that. But thank goodness for this awakening we're all going through. So the first step is to follow Luke's link, and what that'll take you to the ebook that has been written that dives into these topics that we've been touching on in a linear fashion, and just really lays it out what equity is and why it applies to the system, and how it can apply to your life as well, which are all very important things to take in. And that's complimentary from us. We want to give that as a gift to you guys. So come on in and you get the ebook, and then there's also a special presentation, which we go deeper. Me and my favorite guy right here, we go deeper into the history and show some real life examples and testimonials, and we unpack it even further in the video for you. And then also, when you're on the site, go ahead and check out Breaking the Spell, because I'll pass that to Michael, but over to Michael. But first of all, just check out the ebook. It'll give you more context, and then you'll gain a greater understanding of how equity fits into the system.
Yeah. So,
awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
So a little more about that. So it's Equity Revealed. That's the complimentary or unveiled. Excuse me.
Yeah. No.
That's the complimentary ebook for you guys to check out if you want to. And I'm just going to be very straightforward. How we function is we invite you into the private. So we're not in commerce. So there's nothing for sale. We're complimentarily giving you the book, but you have to become a member to do so. And why do we do that? It's because we understand the difference between public and private. So when you agree to come into the private membership, you're agreeing to come in consciously and aware as a living sentient man or woman, not as a corporate person, not
Nice.
clothed in office.
Nice.
Right? So that protects our members, that protects us. And it's a good learning lesson for you as you're starting to learn the distinctions between public and private. So you become a member, you get the free ebook, and then, as Phil was saying, there's a presentation. If you want to watch it, you can. It's a much deeper, comprehensive discussion about equity. And then you have the opportunity to enroll into the equity class if you want to and go deep and take it in. So that's that. In the fellowship at large, we've got the Foundation for Self-Governance, which we've mentioned earlier. And the first thing that you can learn or go through that helps create context is called Breaking the Spell. So it's a documentary that I produced. It's an hour and 4 minutes long, and it's dense. It's really designed as a reference tool for our members. As they're learning, they go back and they watch chapters, they watch it over again, and their wealth of knowledge keeps growing, and they have these aha moments, and that's what it was designed for. But it's a great place to start. You can become a general complimentary member. Doesn't cost anything. You can come in, you can watch that
When you get the complimentary membership, does that include your private podcast?
It doesn't.
Okay. That's another tier.
So that's
I remember you told me you have a podcast. I'm like, oh, sick. I want to learn more about this. You're like, well,
totally private. Yeah. So
which makes me want to listen to it more, because I'm like, he must be saying shit that you can't say on a public podcast. That's what I want to hear.
That's why we designed
definitely
it that
happening.
Way. Yeah. So
I should do that, because there's so many. I'll catch my tongue so often here. I'm like, I'm about to say something like, "Shut up, Luke. You can't say that."
Right. Yeah. Well, we've practiced a lot. So normally, I mean, we're finally starting to come out and share this more in more public settings because we've kind of dialed in what we're comfortable with saying publicly and what we were very distinctly concerned about saying in the private. So, but this is stuff to learn. These are things to learn. These are distinguishing factors that people are starting to really finally grok. So some people just get opposed. I'm not signing another agreement. I'm not getting. Well, it's just the way we operate and function, and you'll learn that that's the way you probably should do it.
They obviously haven't looked at the terms and conditions on every goddamn
That's
app.
absolutely. You're willing to sign everything else away.
I don't even read those because I'm just like, I know I'm giving up rights. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Apple privacy policy, iPhone shit. It's just crazy.
Like 50
dude.
pages is fine print.
Yeah, you don't know what you're getting into.
yeah.
So know your contract. We're
How
always
many
talking
pages
about-
is your membership contract?
I think it's like 12. I think.
Maybe
Okay,
12. Maybe
I can handle
15.
that.
And we
It's-
have
it's
our own.
larger print too.
Actually,
Yes, larger print. Yeah.
knowing you guys as I'm starting to get to know you, I wouldn't even read yours. I'd just be like, yeah, whatever. Like, let me in the site.
Well,
Like-
we encourage people to read
Yeah,
it.
we
but,
like,
you
I
know.
mean,
we
of
like
course.
that. Yeah.
Okay, carry on.
And it has its own definitions in it, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it's not dictated by Black's Law Dictionary or 1828 Webster's.
Yeah,
It's our own definitions. So once you become a member, you can watch Breaking the Spell, which is highly recommended. It's a great place to start if you want to get jamming. And then we have our active membership. So if you want to go a little bit deeper, but you don't want to go too deep, you can become an active member. And then you can join our monthly director calls where it's an open Q&A. We do lessons, and then you can come in and ask questions. You can watch our past episodes. You can get into the Foundation for Self-Governance conference we did last year. It's all stuff for you to watch, and you can just grow your knowledge base. And then if you want to jump into one of the pathways of the Foundation for Self-Governance, you can jump into those pathways whenever you're ready. And the pathways there's 4 of them. There's national status and passport, trifecta, alloyed land, and equity. And they all work together as a really compounding structure, a series of structures that helps you learn how to self-govern your life. Create the distinctions between the public and the private, how you build your life in the private ledger, and how you can be left alone. And the way that they work, the trifecta is the heartbeat in the center of the fellowship at large. And that's where you're building your life in the private ledger. It's where you're building your lives in private trusts. You learn how to develop a private trust through a ministry or a temple or a sanctuary, whatever you want to call it. And we've got a bunch of references in there, biblical references, ancient texts that show that the man's body is his church temple, and in the presence of Source or God, what comes out of your mouth and your actions is your ministry. So if you grok that,
wow.
we're always in our church ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So
everyone listening is in my church ministry.
That's exactly right.
Lifestylist.
You're ministering right now.
The church of the Lifestylist.
Yeah. Without it being religiously oriented, right?
Yeah.
We're
No,
in the
I get you.
spiritual context. The divine jurisdiction is what we're referencing here.
Yeah.
And that opens up a trust and a series of trusts. You learn how to manage trust in the most simple way because it's not hard. You just got to take the time to wrap your mind around it, and then you learn how to administer your life in the private. And the idea is the trust becomes the gatekeeper between the public and the private.
That's like the interface.
It's the interface.
Right, yeah.
And you can still function. You can still do things in the public.
Yeah, you can still get a bank
and other,
account, do all this stuff,
absolutely. You can get cars, houses, whatever you need.
I think that's a big misconception people have when they think about leaving the system.
Yes.
They think about, the
Exactly.
compound and the militia and living off grid and all that, which is an option.
It's an option.
But I know many people who are, quote, out of the system in the ways you describe, and you would never know it looking at them from the outside.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it's just
you might know it from the way their bank account grows instead of shrinking. They're not being siphoned from, but yeah.
Or they're converting it to gold and silver, or they're buying private property. They're moving their real estate, and they're pulling their land patents, and then they move that to the private ledger, right? So you learn about all of this. What's the distinction, how it all functions and flows. And the idea is that when you build your life in the private, you eventually are left alone. If you run into challenges, well, then I like to say you put on your bookkeeping hat and you step into the public and you express equity. You settle and close the matter. You come back into the private.
So this, what you're describing, I can see why that question doesn't necessarily apply to what you guys are doing. I think that question is more directed to maybe people out there like equity is just your one thing. That's all you need.
Yeah.
Whereas it sounds like that's just
Definitely not.
one aspect of the
It's a tool.
architecture that you're sharing.
Yeah. So that's why we were agreeing that it is a powerful tool to use, but you don't have to lead your life where you're constantly expressing that aspect of equity. You embody it.
Yeah.
Right.
But the idea is that you build your life where you're left alone and you only need to express equity if you have affairs that remain in the public that have been unsettled. Go settle them. Take care of those matters. Be honorable and responsible for those matters. And then go back into the private and then learn how to administrate your trust with a lot more power. But if you run into a snag where maybe you're not quite as sophisticated as a trustee yet, you just put on your bookkeeping hat, step into the public, settle and close the matter, and go back into the private. That's the idea of the foundation for self-government.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's dope. This sounds very cool. Because there's like people sharing this information where it's very DIY and kind of throw shit at the wall, see what sticks. You probably won't get in any trouble, but some of it's going to work, some of it's not. There's some people that are like, give me a shit ton of money and I'll just do everything for you and you don't need to know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Which is convenient, but kind of disempowering. And if you do ever get into trouble, you're kind of on your own.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
You got to go back to them.
It's kind of a spectrum of the DIY to the done for you.
Yeah.
And I've always felt like the smarter path, which seems like what you described, is like being guided and being educated and also getting help doing things.
Yeah.
That need to be done, right?
So you were asking, like, how do our programs work?
And also the communal aspect. I think that's the thing that's so daunting about this too, is like, if you're just by yourself on your computer at home, it's freaking terrifying and overwhelming.
Yeah, I want to be clear that we're grateful to be in fellowship. And what that means is it's a fellowship. It's not a drop you off at the bus station and hand you a ticket and say, have a nice ride. It's about being in fellowship. It's about creating this community to build in the private, because really, like we're talking about in the private, if you're in the private, the misconception is you have to go live in, like you said, a compound and a bunker and live under a rock somewhere in the woods and you can't do anything else. That's not the case. But in order for it to be a wonderful parallel society, the more community that comes together and the more fellowship that's built, that's how this is done. And that's the ultimate vision.
Yeah.
So it's not about,
because it's inspiring when you're new and you're learning this kind of thing, and you see someone who's a bit further ahead of you being successful, right? That's such a boost of confidence. And then as your experience and expertise grows, at least if you're this kind of person and you like reciprocity, you feel really good about sharing what you've learned with other people. You know, so I've learned a few things in this space, and like I can't wait to tell my friends about it when they call me, "What's a trust?" or whatever. You know, it's like, oh, well, I know a little bit. Let me tell you what I know. It's like, it feels really good to be able to give back. You know,
we can't do this alone, and that's why we have the fellowship. And we want people to learn this and embody this and create generational knowledge, generational wealth. Right? It has to be done as a community. And we know we can't do it alone. So we want to broaden this out and bring people into the community.
I mean, imagine, I don't know how many people you guys have in the fellowship, but I'm imagining some of the people are going to be raising their kids with this understanding.
That's right. That's
right?
exactly
I mean,
right.
can you imagine the generational power?
Absolutely.
And like, well, my parents taught me this is how you live life in the private. And then they teach their kids and so on and so on. I mean, that's like the seed. The real that's change. The seed of the new earth.
Yes, it absolutely is. Yeah. And we're very present to that, and that brings great joy. Seeing members sharing this with their kids, and the kids are going to just know this as the way it is. It's not going to be anything different or have to deprogram. It's just taught from day one, and they're able to function in the private. And that's such a beautiful thing. It's so heartwarming.
Yeah. I mean, that's the rules of the game with the pseudo elites, right? When you look at generational wealth and all these truck stretchers and shell companies and like all the games that they know how to play, there's a reason why those families and those bloodlines persist, right? Because they pass on the knowledge of how to operate within and without the system to the generations that follow.
I do want to create a real vision for this too, because some people, they might have a little bit of a grind to, well, at what point does this end? We forever have to find these private structures to stay away from the system. Well, the idea is that enough of us become aware of this, and the system shrinks. The system finds its way back to what it was originally designed to be, which is
Right.
very little. Where we find our way back into a place of self-governance, and we don't need to do all these structures, and we don't need to look at the distinction between the public and the private. Really,
Right.
but this takes time. So what we've done, and what we often say, and we used to say more years ago, that we're building bridgeways out of Babylon. It's a bridgeway. It's one stone at a time as we as humanity are building this new bridgeway into the new earth. And it takes time. Our vision is that we don't need to talk about the distinction between the public and the private in the future. But right now, we need to. There needs to be that awareness of what has been built in this matrix that's been created, that's been so out of our awareness that we're finally waking up to what's really happening. And we're just helping people see it and helping people build that bridgeway into the new world. That's the ultimate vision.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. I want one last question for each of you. Who have been 3 teachers or teachings in general that have influenced your life and who you are?
Wow, I don't know if I could zero it down to 3.
Yeah.
William Cooper for sure. I mean, there's no way I can deny that. And I do want to say one thing about his book, Behold the Pale Horse. After they killed him, eventually they bought out that publication and they took out a very important chapter, which is the Protocols of Zion.
When you buy it on Amazon now, it's missing.
It's missing the whole chapter.
I heard that.
Yeah,
So find your way back to the original copy that has the
I can share the PDF with you.
we clearly have the versions. Anyway, I had to mention
You
that.
know what's another good one that I just remembered? I read years ago, and it was just like so disturbing. Confessions of an Economic Hitman.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a great one. So speaking of other influence of my life is Griffin, who wrote The Creature from Jekyll Isle. Masterful book. And I'd say Yogananda.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, just a principled man that his feet were always on the soil, and he was bringing truth to the world at a time that needed that kind of truth. And in a way, we're sort of, the baton has been passed to this generation that we're bringing forth a whole nother level of truth where our feet are in the soil. We're going back to all things natural.
Epic.
Yeah.
Great choices.
Yeah.
Cover the spectrum.
Yeah. Some big ones for me. Whereas David Dida, Way of a Superior Man.
Oh, that's
that's will forever be in there. Kundalini Yoga, Yogi Bhajan, big for me as well. Love Kundalini Yoga. This really, really changed me in so many ways. And then for the third, let's see. I'm trying to narrow it down in a different aspect. I keep having Michael Singer come up too. The Untethered Soul and the Surrender Experiment was really big for me to recalibrate my inner being. So I believe if I had to think of a quick 3, those are them.
Beautiful.
I'd want to reference one other book, Fruits from a Poisonous Tree.
Oh yeah.
Brilliant book. It's comprehensive. It'll sizzle your brain a bit if you're new to this. And we talk about it a lot. Yeah. It's a very, very good book to read. And there's a section in there that has a draft from Woodrow Wilson where they're talking about all these things that we're referencing. Where it came out in his memoirs. I think after he was president or after he died, I don't remember the chronology. But basically, he just kind of admits that he let all this stuff happen, but he pretends that he was unwitting to all of this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's very, very good.
I have that book downstairs and it's waiting for me to read it. So thanks for the reminder.
Yes. I used to read that quote from that all the time and I stopped reading it. But I recommend people, if anything, at least read that section of the book.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we'll put all those at lukestorey.com/equity. And that link will also be clickable on your podcast app. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. It's been amazing.
Thanks, bro.
I'm super excited.
Thanks for having us.
To continue to get to know you and learn a bit more about what you're doing in the world. I think this is going to be really valuable to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
We feel the same.
And that, my friends, is what we call a wrap. Thanks for hanging out on this week's episode of The Lifestylist. But before I sign off, I want to remind you about one of the best ways to support the show while also upgrading your life, my online master market. That's where I've curated a collection of my favorite lifestyle design products, world-class supplements, EMF protection gear, water purification, blue light solutions, biohacking tech, and tons more. And these aren't just random health products. I mean, you can find that on Amazon. I've tested and vetted every item on the site. So if you see it there, it's something I personally use and trust. So if you've ever wondered what brands I actually use day to day or where you can find the gear I'm always talking about, the Master Market is your one-stop resource. Check it out. Head over to lukestory.com/store. You can browse around, pick up some upgrades, and know that every purchase helps this show keep trucking. And the best part is that nearly everything listed there comes with an exclusive discount just for Lifestylist listeners. So you get cutting-edge tools to optimize your mind, body, and spirit and save some dough in the process. Again, that link is lukestory.com/store. Get in there and dig around and stock up on the best of the best. And you can click that link right in this episode description. Oh, and don't miss the search bar while you're there. That's how you can quickly find exactly what you're looking for without getting lost. All right, that's it. Until next time, be well and share this episode with someone you love. Hell, share it with someone you're struggling to love because everyone deserves it.